Welcome everyone to Post-Crisis Chat, the Brave and the Bold edition. I'm your co-host Randy, and with me is the ever-present, ever in a Superman t-shirt.
Is that my cue to talk? I thought you were actually going to give me an introduction there, but okay, yes, I am Cookie. So if you're a first-time viewer, we want to welcome you. Please remember to smash that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell as well. Do all the stuff that you can to get that notifications that, we're dropping out new episodes. We usually drop about an episode a week. So, next time it pops up, you're going to be notified.
Absolutely. It's really such a small thing to do, but it really helps us grow the channel. If you're not a first-time viewer, we want to welcome you back. We're so thankful to have you here.
Yes, we don't do this without you. And then this is the part where I've got to do the thing that everyone's been expecting every time we do an episode, advising you of the decades-old spoilers, because this is decades old. If you have not read it like us, then you're about to be spoiled on the issue we're doing today. And the issue today is going to be issue 42 of Swamp Thing. And then there we go, if you want to see what that cover looks like. We got a cover by Stephen Bissette. As always, it's written by Alan Moore, with interior artwork by Randy's favorite artist in the world, Stephen Bissette. Inks by Jon Totlebon.
He's back, baby! What? I was sad he wasn't on the last book.
You mean Totlebon. I was going to say, I know if this was Bissette, you're going to be sarcastic about it.
No. I was being legitimate. When Bissette, or rather when Totlebon is there, I think he helps improve Bissette's work, and I think maybe Totlebon does some of the finishes on Bissette's work, which improves it. Although, my suspicion about rushed pages has actually been confirmed, at least with this issue, but we'll talk about that when we get to it.
Okay.
So first off, let's look at this cover. We have Swamp Thing on fire surrounded by some undead-looking creatures. There's a person in the foreground, which I think, based on the fingernails, was the voodoo priest that we saw last issue. As if the priest is currently raising the dead around Swamp Thing. Given the lack of detail on this cover, I'm sure this is Bissette's piece. But the one place that I've really thought Bissette always did a really good job was on undead stuff. He just kills it when it comes to undead, and so possibly the best Bissette cover I've ever seen.
I think there's some other ones that he's done that we've covered that I thought were a little bit better. This one, I don't hate it. He said the undead, the zombies definitely look good. Even the voodoo priest, if that's who that is, looks pretty good. My only complaint about this cover is the fire coming off of Swamp Thing looks not great. I mean, this looks like a 12-year-old drew the flames coming off of Swamp Thing there.
I legitimately wonder how much of that was coloring issues as opposed to the pencils.
I'm going to say it's a little bit of both. And the only reason I'm going to say this is because, and then I want to hear your point, but when I've seen flames in comic books, the flames are very wavy. And then you see the little sparks flying off of them typically. This looks very stationary. Like this looks like it's just pasted on to Swamp Thing. Like someone just glued cardboard flames onto a living plant creature.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And honestly, I was really so taken by the rest of the cover. I hadn't focused quite on the flames like that, but now I can't unsee it. So, thank you for that.
I'm glad to ruin something in your life. It brings me joy.
Open the book with a corpse rotting in a coffin. This is where Bissette's rushed and undetailed work actually works really well for me. The horror vibe here is excellent. The narrator is talking about how boring it is to be a corpse in the ground, and I mentioned last episode that I have a fear of being buried and being aware of what's happening to me while I'm buried and in the ground. And I know the fear is completely irrational, and I know that's not going to happen, but that little voice in the back of my head, it just won't shut up about it. And this book helps reinforce that fear. Thank you very much, Alan Moore. Ultimately, the corpse can't sleep. And I am going to interject one bit of spoiler here. I think this corpse is probably the father of Alice, one of the extras that also works at the autistic boarding house with Abby. I think this is her father that we're seeing at the beginning. That's just my suspicion. It's never confirmed, but that's my opinion.
You could be right. It is definitely a possibility. I mean, as far as getting over your irrational fear of being buried alive, just remember that it's only until Mormon Jesus returns, and then you'll come back. So it's all good. It'll all be good in the end. But anyway, now that you kind of contemplate that, I see the hamsters turning in your head right now. Um, but I honestly I loved this opening. This was probably one of my favorite openings to a Swamp Thing issue. It captured a really good creepy vibe, but also it had a little bit of a dark humor to it, with the corpse not being able to sleep and turning over in the coffin. Is like there was just he really did a good job on setting the scene with this one. I was like this. It felt like everything that I was dreading after reading last issue. Like starting this issue, I was like, okay, I got a good feeling this is going to be a fun book, and it
Right.
almost was that way.
Yeah, no, I completely follow. So I really was taken by the panel where Alan Moore is talking about generation after generation of Beatles passed before your unblinking gaze.
Oh yeah, that was great because it's one of those moments where it's like it's Alan Moore doing classic Alan Moore, taking something that just feels like it should be so stupid, but just making it feel so brilliant. I mean, it's like
And
he just has this
creepy.
knack
My
of
gosh.
yeah, he has this knack of just making these mundane things and like using these very flowery words to make them seem so poetic. That's where he's the genius of comic books. He can do stuff like that, and you're not getting that in a lot of modern comics.
Yeah, that's true. On the next page, we get a two-page spread. The narrator tells us the people in the plantation graveyard are rising and greeting each other. Old enemies greet each other as friends. Lovers see each other for the first time in a long time. That part was actually kind of sweet when you get over the fact that they're undead. And when you look at it, you see somebody looking at the art. You see a child being raised up in the air by presumably their parent, and the child looks very happy here. The art just really complemented this page.
Yeah, to me it was interesting because I felt like the art, even though like if you're not paying attention to the kid, if it's out of context and you see the kid getting tossed up in the air, you may not be fully like aware of what's happening. Um, I felt what made it so sweet was the writing. Like it felt like there was a contrast of the panels look dark and creepy with the zombies coming out and everything like that. But then when you're reading the words that are going along with each panel, it completely contradicts the creepiness that you're getting from the artwork. And seeing enough horror and zombie pictures and things, it was kind of a nice touch. Like you don't often see that kind of thing happen. Usually zombies come back, it's like, all right, they're going to be eating brains and ripping flesh from bone and stuff like that. This was just more like a happy zombie reunion. It was kind of cool.
It really is. And then I did want to call out that we have some Easter egg gravestones, just like the last issue. Our David Pratt is a friend of Bissette and Totlebon. Then we also see Tom Seltzer, who is another friend of theirs who created the 1980s indie comic Spaced. I've never read it. I'm also told, according to the internet, that I said Seltzer before, but I think it's Stazer. I mispronounced it. My bad. Stazer also did a comic strip called Lionheart for the Fantagraphics Critters comic book series in the late 80s. Again, I've never read it. But yeah, like just overall, the art on this page is just chef's kiss. This is where Bissette shines. And next we get a full page splash of Swamp Thing and Abby, and some extras dancing in the background. This issue is called Strange Fruit, which is a reference to the iconic protest song by Billie Holiday that talks about the lynching of black people in the South. And sadly, 87 years later, here we are still dealing with the same problem. The art on this page, though, is pretty good for Bissette. I'm thinking maybe he got Totlebon's help on the finishes, and the colors on this page are just spectacular. I don't know how well that comes across with your older issue of the book when I'm looking at this digitally, but the colors on this book, this page are just perfection. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I think you're getting like the better color versions of things than I am. I'm getting the more like just classic the way it was printed, which it's not always the best, but I'm a nostalgia guy, so I like the fact that it doesn't always look perfect. I like the nostalgia of like literally right next to this splash page is a 80s ad for Oreo cookies that's got like a little maze on it. So like that's the stuff that I'm here for, man. I like the old days.
Well, and my color, to be clear, my colors are the original colors on the book. As we move on to the next page, Abby mentions that the vibe of the place seems much like when she and Swamp Thing faced the Monkey King. You can check out our prior videos for more information on Swamp Thing issues 25 to 27 that deal with the Monkey King. Swamp Thing notes the land has etched a pattern from the past that persists to control people to this day. Abby recognizes her friend Alice from the autistic school where Abby works, but Swamp Thing warns Abby back due to the malignancy that he's sensing here. In the bottom panel, we see where the dead have risen and they are marching on the plantation. Per Stephen Bissette's blog, this is a really cool little thing here. And I don't know if, again, because you're reading that older copy, which is on that pulpier newsprint, and sometimes colors fade over time. But I don't know if you caught this, but per Stephen Bissette's blog, the face of the zombie in the center of the page was drawn by comics luminary Archie Goodwin. He drew his own face into the panel.
To be fair, even if I had a pristine like digital like enhanced copy of something like this, I've never seen Archie Goodwin's face, so I wouldn't have known that.
I think the Archie Goodwin cameo is really cool here. Like, this guy's not even associated with the book, and he just snuck in and vandalized somebody's page, and everybody thought it was cool.
He was a very beloved editor. I remember when he passed on. I can't remember if it was like late '90s or mid 2000s, but I remember in the comics they all had Marvel and DC and I believe Valiant, like a bunch of Image. They all had tributes to Archie Goodwin in their books. It was kind of like when Kirby died. It was like everybody was doing tributes because it was just for some reason Goodwin was so beloved, and I don't really know why. Like I would love to hear the stories of like what it was of Archie Goodwin that everyone loved about the man.
Interesting. I will have to look more into that. I'm curious myself. I do want to say overall the art on this page is pretty good, especially the face of Alice. The vacant expression on her face with the sweat dripping down the side of her face that she is not wiped away shows that very clearly she is not in control of herself. She's being controlled by something otherworldly.
No, it's one of those few times where you get a really solid face drawn by Bissette, which is nice to see because later on in the book there's going to be some faces that you're just going to be like, oh man, why?
Yeah, it's the next page actually. As we move on, Abby tries to speak to Alice again, but Alice says she has to go pour the salt pattern out again because the wind will have blown it away. Alice mentions the salt is what keeps the undead in their graves. Abby asks where the actors are, and Alice answers all the white folks are inside. Abby heads for the house and asks Swamp Thing to follow Alice. Swamp Thing senses approaching darkness. We get another panel of zombies on the march. These zombies look awesome. I think Bissette has really found his calling here when it comes to drawing zombies. Is Kirkman still making the Walking Dead comics? Maybe we can get Bissette some work over there. But I did want to mention Alice's face on this page. In both the panels where you see Alice's face, it's not great. The one on the left is just, her face is completely in shadow. You can't even see her face. The one on the right is a little better, but not up to what we saw on the previous page.
No, I wasn't even paying attention to Alice's face in that one. I was paying attention to Abby's because Abby didn't look that good right there.
We cut back to the basement of the plantation house where our actors are possessed by ghosts of the past, playing out their drama of Billy getting flayed alive by Richard while Angie watches. These are the actual names of the characters, not the ghosts who have taken them over. So most of the time I'll be referring to the characters by their actual name, not the ghost name. And as a reminder, Richard is currently possessed by the original plantation owner, Wesley. Billy is possessed by the slave, William. And Angie is possessed by Charlotte, Wesley's sister. Richard has finished flaying Billy alive. For how we ended up here with Billy being flayed alive, check out that last episode. Someone tells Richard that guests are arriving. Richard cleans off his blade and tells Angie that they have to go upstairs and greet their guest. Because, once you get done flaying somebody alive, that's what you do. You entertain guests, right? That's how this all works?
I mean, this is like, what, the 1700, something like that. I don't know the exact date of when all of this was happening. History was not my best subject in school, so my may be a little bit off. But it was a different era, so it's like, yeah, maybe that was, they didn't have Netflix, so it's not like you could sit down and watch Stranger Things and then have dinner guests. You probably had to, play a slave and then have dinner guests. So it was a different era, man. I don't know how it worked.
In terms of years, again, they don't ever really say, but this is probably mid 1800s, given the style of dress and some of the contextual clues. That's my guess as somebody who is kind of into history. A little bit, not a lot, but yeah, probably early to mid 1800s. Anyway, Angie protests because Billy is still alive after being skinned. Richard says that that's good because it means maybe the rest of the slaves will learn what happens when you try to, quote, steal a march on West Jackson. So I looked it up, and steal a march in this context just means to gain an advantage over someone by doing something unexpectedly. Because that phrase really kind of stood out to me, and I was like, what exactly does that mean? As everyone but Billy heads upstairs, there's a silhouette at the top of the stairs.
It's the only thing I want to point out on this page was I thought the coloring in the first 4 panels, the background coloring is like just, I don't know what's going on. It's like an acid trip, but it's beautiful. It draws everything to it. It's like it's a complete contrast to the horror that you're seeing in front of you, and then this background's just like almost rainbow swirl kind of thing going on. It's just bizarre, but I love it. And then we're talking about horrible faces, and then that bottom left corner is once again a horribly drawn face.
Yeah,
and
it really is.
What makes the face so bad is the lips are way too small, and the shading is, I don't know what is going on with the shading here.
You know what? I'm going to defend the lips because I think the lips are the actual where a lot of the expressiveness comes from. And he's like pursing his lips because he's angry about the situation. He's like, I had to just skin somebody alive, and his white guy plantation owner logic. I just had to skin somebody alive. That was difficult, and now I've got to deal with guests. If these slaves would just act like they're supposed to, I wouldn't have to deal with this. So like he's got that anger look on his face. Now, the face doesn't look good. I'm not defending that at all. But the lips part I will, because I think he's kind of like doing that kind of thing.
I can see it. but it's still just it's not even like it's too it's like not wide enough. That's what's getting to me is it's like they're not just very thin, but it's like very small lips.
Yeah.
The shading is the worst part to me. It's just I don't know what they were doing for the shading because usually shading, if you're trying to get like a heavy dark like that to kind of show the emotion, you either go solid blacks or you would do a cross hatching method. And this is just like a feathering that's going all the same direction basically, and it just it doesn't work. If something's off on it.
Okay, let's talk about this because this is actually something. Well, yeah, this is something that I had tacked on to the end, but I'll point it out here because it's the first place where it happened. This page, 100% was rushed into finished. And we know why. So, in an interesting bit of trivia, Bissette has said on his blog that FedEx lost pages 7, 8, 9, 12, and 20 that required him to work at a furious speed to recreate them with the help of Ron Randall inking the pages. Right before the book was sent to the printers, the lost pages ended up showing up, but the redone pages were the ones used as the originals had never been inked.
Okay.
So for once,
That's
we have
interesting. Now, see that
confirmation.
that's what they need to do if if they're doing like re-releases like absolutes and things like that. And the like if they ever do like a have they done an omnibus for Swamp Thing?
Not for Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, and a lot of people are really confused why they haven't. All they've
Yeah.
done is an Absolute Edition, and the Absolute Edition got recolored, and the internet hates the recolor. I personally like the recolor a lot from what I've seen. I also wanted to go back real
Yeah.
quick to the colors that you mentioned at the top of the panel. Those colors do look really nice. And when I was reading through this, I was like really caught up in the story and what's going on. And, you know, this guy's just been flayed alive and the plantation owners are like, whatever, we got to entertain people. And I'm just like, what's going to happen next? I really didn't stop to appreciate the colors. And you're
Yeah.
right, they're amazing. And I would really, really wish I had that absolute edition that has this so I could compare the two pages because I bet they look phenomenal in the absolute edition too.
It probably does. I mean, the way you're selling it, it's almost like you're hyping it up to the point like, people watching this should maybe buy the Absolute Edition so they can see these wonderful colors and these
Hey,
pencils.
you
Maybe
know
give us
what?
a little extra money.
Yeah, if
I'm
you
not
need to
saying that's what you're doing.
buy the absolute edition, we got a link down below. We'll talk more about that at the end, but yeah, it can help the channel out a little bit. Next, we see Abby back inside trying to tell the actors about the situation outside so they can all GTFO. Richard is shocked that Abby is wearing pants. He asks Angie why her friends are dressing like men. Abby is confused, and Angie tells Abby that Billy was skinned by Richard in the cellar while grabbing the knife used for it away from Richard.
Don't have much on this one. I mean, like, it's pretty
But
self-explanatory right here.
but she's wearing pants. Cookie, how can you explain a woman wearing pants? What kind of sense does that make?
I mean, I agree. It makes no sense because like women should be wearing skirts. They should be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. This is outrageous. This is terrible. This is just like I'm just more disappointed by the fact that I think by the time I got to this page and I was like, I knew something bad is coming, but there's a little part of me that's like, okay, Abby's hanging out with Swamp Thing. He's been in a lot of action at this point. I'm hoping that I'm going to turn the page and I'm going to see her clock the hell out of this guy. I got a gut feeling that we're not going to see it.
Well, let's talk about the next page then. Richard grabs the knife back while Abby freaks out about what this place has done to everyone. Abby tries to convince them that they are not who they think they are, and that's when Richard decides to stab Abby. Richard tells the others that they're going to go outside and see what all this screeching and hollering is about, while Abby lays there and presumably bleeds to death. Richard makes a pun about how all the outside noise will raise the dead. Nice one, Alan Moore.
He's a master of puns as well. I'm getting sick and tired of Abby being the damsel in distress. I'm waiting for her. I'm like, if this was a Superman book, Lois Lane would have kicked that guy in the nuts and probably beat the crap out of him. So I'm just, I don't know if we're ever going to see that in this series, but I really want to see Abby get stronger and start to stand up for herself a little bit more.
Yeah, that would be very cool. I hope we see that too. I hope we see her grow as a character. Let's see, we're back outside. Alice has realized that the dead are already awake. All of them, which for some reason struck me as humorous. Then she starts trying to convince them all to go back to sleep in the ground. Like, no, you don't belong here. You got to go back. Go back to sleep. Go back to sleep. And then we see one of the undead call out to Alice, and she recognizes her father, while a tear runs down her face. Once again, spectacular art on the undead. Alice's facial expressions are actually pretty good here too. And I am calling out really good art on the undead, but that's at the bottom of the page. I've got to be honest, the undead in that top strip on the page, that's not great. Although I do enjoy the fact that one of them is headless and carrying their head beside them. We find out that Alice's father was buried in the old slave graveyard because they couldn't afford a plot at the cemetery. Alice's father relays to her that none of the slaves have ever actually been able to rest in that cemetery. They have too much unfinished business. Tonight they are headed out to demand their freedom. Alice's father asked her to walk with them. Swamp Thing watches. No one notices him. In the distance, we see bonfires set by the extras as the undead slaves march on the plantation house. This
was actually really emotional.
Yeah, this is just my thought was this is badass. I mean, they are like, to me this is revolutionary. They're like, we couldn't rest for over 100 years because of what you did to us and how you enslaved us, and we're gonna go back and we're gonna demand our freedom. And they actually, that the part about freedom and demanding the freedom was mentioned back on that first page with the man who was underground and not restful.
No, it was definitely, especially this. So here's the thing: like the last issue, I mentioned how I am uncomfortable reading racial tensions in comics, and I'm uncomfortable watching it in movies and stuff too, because it's just it can be an uncomfortable topic to have to deal with. This one though, I didn't get that. I was right there. I was like, I'm enjoying this book. It's well written. It's emotional. They even had me like with the whole of them going to like march to get their freedom back. I was like, hell yeah, man. Let's go get the freedom. Go kick that slave owner's butt. Like I'm in it for this one. So
Oh yeah,
I don't know what the difference is.
Yeah, this has been a really, really good issue so far, and it will continue to be. So anyway, I won't get too far off topic on that, but next we head back in the house where Abby convinces herself that she was not really stabbed, that it is only the house that is convincing her of that. When she pulls the knife out, she discovers it's a spring-loaded blade. She tells Angie that they are going downstairs to get Billy, while trying to stick herself in the side of the head with a spring-loaded knife, which I kind of thought was funny.
No, I chuckled at this, and I called it too. Like when she first got stabbed, I was like, well, one, I know you're not killing Abby because I know enough about Swamp Thing lore to be like, Abby's not going to die probably. And then it's like, it's actors, all this stuff. It's got to be a fake blade. It's got to be like either she switched it or something happened. It's like she's not really stabbed. So I was proud of myself that I called this one ahead of schedule. It's like I nailed it. And then stabbing in the head thing, I laughed, but I also laughed because it's like, one, it's funny that that's how she's trying to prove that it's not real. But two, I was like, what if you made a mistake? Is that really where you want to test it?
right, right next to your eyeball. I mean, and it's spring loaded. So if you accidentally, if you're off just a little bit, that blade comes out and stabs you in the eye. Whether that's a real blade or not, that's gonna hurt and potentially blind you.
Exactly.
I
It feels like
mean,
there's better ways she could have done this.
100%. Next, we see Richard standing in the doorway of the plantation house, yelling to the extras outside about cheap tricks and chicken blood. The extras talk about how this is a special night because the zombies are walking. Richard talks about how this is 1842. Hey, look at that! I was right. Mid 1800s. Richard talks about how this is 1842. Like somehow that means zombies don't exist. Richard orders the extras back to their home before he opens fire with the gun he is carrying. Richard starts going through an existential crisis, thinking about the last time this happened and how he did open fire and shoot a woman in the stomach. Afterwards, he was beaten by the mob he was firing into. At the same time, he is also telling himself that hasn't happened before. So whatever that ghost is inside Richard, that ghost of Wesley, Richard's able to recognize what's going on and maybe take some control of his body back. But Richard also seems very confused about where he is. I have to say the facial expressions on this page are phenomenal. Really great and expressive art on these pages, especially when we're looking at Richard.
These two pages really well done. Especially it's like the I don't know how it is on yours, but like mine, it's like I got both pages open here, and it almost feels like it's one consecutive page. But I know it's not because the way you read it and everything, but it's just the way that they laid it out, colored it, penciled it, everything kind of bleeds together nicely. It feels like it's supposed to be one piece.
You know what? I'm switching back and forth between them on digital because I only get it's not a 2-page spread on digital. But yeah, I can see what you're talking about. And when I switch over to that next page, and see the facial expressions on the undead, that's just this whole thing is, yeah. Especially if you take it together like that. That's really good. Um, so let's talk about the next page real quick. The undead have arrived at the plantation and they are talking to Wesley, the ghost inside Richard right now. Richard asks what they want with fear in his eyes. And again, this is such great art here. Close up on Richard's eyes and the sweat running down his face. The undead in the panel above his eyes are just, like I said before, they're phenomenal. These two pages are just amazing.
It's really good, and it's funny because there's been points in this book where Bissette's artwork kind of reminds me of other artists um, that were kind of like popular in the 80s and the 90s and stuff like that. And the two that kind of come to mind are like there's a couple panels where it feels almost like Sam Keith kind of style artwork, and then there's times like with the zombies it almost feels like a Richard Corbin uh, kind of artwork. I don't know if you're familiar with Richard Corbin that well. He did like a lot of horror comics as well.
Not off the top of my head. I might recognize something they've done, but yeah, not. Oh, the undead tell Richard Wesley that they want their freedom, and if their freedom is not given, then everyone must continue to repeat this night of pain and suffering forever. Richard tells the undead to go to hell, which is ironically funny because they literally can't. Or maybe a Swamp Thing says they are all already there. Swamp Thing insists that they must break the cycle. Richard Wesley gets big mad and shoots Swamp Thing. Because, we've seen before how effective shooting Swamp Thing is. But to be fair, he
Yeah.
doesn't know that.
No, it's like Superman. I mean, it's like everyone who's shooting Superman. At some point, you should realize bullets aren't going to work, but they do it anyways. But it's like
Bullets flying
I'll
off.
give them the benefit of the doubt that it's like Swamp Thing's lesser known, so it's like yeah, maybe shooting him's gonna.
Next, we see that the shot pushed Swamp Thing into one of the bonfires created outside the plantation house. I hope he's going to be okay. Abby freaks out that Swamp Thing is burning in the fire, and the undead say that the shot has been fired, so the cycle will begin again. I don't understand why Abby is freaking out. She knows he can grow a new body.
I don't get that either. And also the other thing is like, I mean, I feel like a lot of people have kind of you cannot. It's very difficult to burn moist plants. Like I can't just walk up to a fern and light it on fire. It's not just going to catch on fire. So I don't know. Like me, I kind of feel like is swapping a little dry here, or like what's it feels like he might be a little too wet to catch on fire.
You know what? I agree with you. But in this one instance, and I know I do this so rarely, but in this one instance, I'm going to suspend disbelief and say, okay, Swamp Thing can burn. um, so Swamp Thing, being the badass that he is, shouts out "No" from inside the fire. Capital letters, bold letters, red background on the no. Just not very nice. He is inside the bonfire and he gets back up. He will not allow this evil to continue. He heads for the house while Richard Wesley screams, "No, not my house! It's all that's dear to me!" Very dramatically.
The image of him on fire running into the house is beautiful. That is
Yeah,
just such the coloring. I mean, it just looks so awesome.
yeah. This is where Bissette's lack of detail really shines. The undead and this scene right here. And you know what? I'm going to even go so far as to say I think the coloring is doing a lot of the work here. Because if you
Yeah.
really look at the pencils, they're just so scattered and all over the place. But the pencils being scattered and all over the place, combined with the perfect coloring of the fire, just makes this page exceptional. I love this.
It really does. It's really well colored. Well, I mean, the whole Swamp Thing being red, and then like the detail of him being black. It just it's kind of a cool little look. I mean, almost like you'd want to see like an anti Swamp Thing villain come by. Like, all right, you got Swamp Thing versus Fire Thing, and there's Fire Thing all red and black.
He's Fire Thing now. I like that. One other thing I wanted to mention about this fire scene is this is another one where I can't wait to see the Absolute Edition and see what the colors look like in it, because I don't know. A lot of the internet complains that they don't like the new coloring, and from what of the new coloring I've seen, I really do like it. But I have to wonder if this is one of those places where the new coloring might end up doing it a disservice. I found a couple of places where the new coloring is not my favorite because it does seem to soak up some of the lines, so they're harder to see.
Mm.
And I wonder if this might be that one of those situations. Well, hopefully I'll have my book next week and I'll be able to find out for sure. You know what? If you order the book from Amazon, I bet you'll get it a lot faster than I did ordering it from an Amazon competitor. Anyway.
That's a good point. So like if you're going to get it, definitely order it from Amazon so you won't spend episode after episode after episode complaining that you haven't gotten your absolute Swamp Thing.
Exactly. And if you want your own copy, right there in the description. Anyway, so as Swamp Thing moves through the house, setting everything on fire, he recalls how Alec Holland was set on fire in the past. The memory doesn't seem to disturb him much. I really like that. I feel like he's kind of moving past his Alec Holland phase of life and realizing that he is no longer Alec Holland. He is an elemental representative of the green on Earth. He also notes that if a tree is destroyed, Swamp Thing also notes that if a tree is to be destroyed, You don't bury its fruit. You burn it out at the roots to keep it from growing again, which I think is an apt analogy in this situation. The undead rush into the fire of the plantation, and Swamp Thing watches the plantation burn down. His body dies, and he slips back into the green.
That's, I mean, definitely. I was thinking the same thing when you were talking about that with the burning the roots and stuff like that. It's like basically destroying the house feels like it's going to kind of end the cycle, break the cycle, I guess you'd say,
Yeah, I
of
think
all of
that's the
this
implication
hatred.
here.
Yeah, so I thought the same thing. I thought that was really very poetic the way he did that, especially using roots and him being Swamp Thing. It's like Alan Moore again being Alan Moore, like, a little pun in there.
Yeah, yeah.
The
Alan Moore got
panel,
the dad jokes.
definitely. The page here is gorgeous with the panel of him busting into the house on fire, looking menacing. Fire Thing is alive and kicking. Um, and then like the other panel, it looks like it's basically the fire version of Swamp Thing. If you look at it, like you see the eyes, you see the little thing that goes over his nose. It should be his nose. Uh, all of that makes a panel, and all of that is being made out of the smoke and flame of the house that is on fire down at the bottom panel. It's like they really constructed this beautifully.
I agree. The art on this page looks really good. I do think the coloring of the fire on this page is not as good as it was on the previous page. It's not bad by any means, but it's feeling a little thicker and a little more generic, kind of like what we saw on the cover, at least in the version I'm looking at. But one thing I really, really enjoyed about this was you've got all these warm colors as you're coming down the page and all this fire going off. And then in that last panel, Swamp Thing is back in the green. And I just love the juxtaposition of the house on the left side, fire, violence, people, well, undead people, going into the fire and dying, and then immediately to the right of that, we've got nice, peaceful, cool colors. Swamp Thing very obviously kind of like relaxing and stretching himself out and just falling into the green. Very nice and peaceful. The it's exactly like you said. The page is constructed beautifully, and that to me is a big part of it. Is all these warm colors and then the cool color down at the bottom.
Yeah, the cool color helped bring it all together because it's like if you didn't have that, it would just look like a very like violent kind of page. Still a cool design and everything, but just the contrast of the cool and the warm. They did a really good job on this one. Again, I'm liking this book. This was a good book.
Yeah. And then as we move on, we see that the fire is burned out and Abby is approaching the skeleton of the house. Swamp Thing grows a new body from nearby vegetation, and Abby says he missed a hell of a fire. Swamp Thing asks why everyone is standing around, and Abby says that they are all in shock and she has called an ambulance. Abby mentions that Alice felt it was all a dream, but Abby thinks that everybody's going to be okay.
Kind of a nice little tie up to everything. I mean, like this
Yeah.
would have been a good ending to the book, but I like the way it's going to end. I think the ending that we get is really, really beautiful. Um, I thought I love the little joke Abby makes of like you're kind of seeing they're that comfortable in the relationship to her making the jokes now of it's like, oh yeah, you died, you got burned alive, but man, you missed a hell of a party.
Right? Yeah, I do think they're getting more comfortable with each other in their relationship. That's a really good observation I hadn't picked up on before. On the next page, we get Angie talking to Billy as herself. Neither of them appears to be possessed any longer, which goes towards the fact that the cycle has been broken. And interestingly, Angie is calling Billy, quote, my love, which is like a complete 180 from the last issue, where she did not even want to be in the same scene with him. She was telling the director, we need to fire this actor. The artwork here seems to indicate that Billy was not actually skinned alive, but he perceives himself as skinned. Angie promises to make all the hurt stop and get him better. Apparently being possessed by a ghost has made her not as racist as she used to be.
That he perceives himself as being hurt, because this was actually the page that really kind of confused me a little bit, because you don't see his, like, he doesn't appear to be hurt except for the two panels where the skin coming off of his cheek, and then the bottom one where it looks like all the skin on his torso and his arms are basically peeled off. I didn't know if that was just a, like, something the artist and the inker and everyone had screwed up on, or what. So I'm kind of glad you threw that out there, because now that I kind of think about it like that, I see it differently. So I thought it was just a complete, like, mess up.
That was my interpretation. If you are watching the video and you disagree with my interpretation, or you have your own interpretation, we would love to know what it is. Please post it down in the comments.
I'd be interested to see what people think about that, because that's just, I didn't think about it until you brought it up.
So on the next page, Abby and Swamp Thing are talking. Abby mentions that the director is in profound shock and can't talk. I believe that's the director we see hugging a camera in that top left panel. Although, given that face, I'm not even sure that that thing in the top left panel is even a human, but I digress. Richard ran into the plantation fire and perished in the fire. They talk about how the house had a hook in Richard, and how Constantine has a hook in Swamp Thing currently, with his promises of information that never seem to come to fruition. Swamp Thing mentions he hasn't seen Constantine in weeks, and Swamp Thing hopes Constantine has abandoned whatever game he was playing with Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing asks if all the zombies were destroyed in the fire, and Abby thinks they were, but notes there didn't seem to be enough bodies to account for all the dead she saw.
Interesting. Okay, that's leading to something. I kind of had a feeling, like, I was curious, like, okay, did everybody die in the fire? Like, who did anyone survive? What happens here? Now we find out.
And I'll be honest, most of the it feels like most of the Swamp Thing comic books end around page 21 or 22, and this one ends up going on a little longer. And as we've alluded to, we'll find out why. So on the next page, we see two men talking about the set burning down, and someone has ripped off the camera truck. I laugh because I know who ripped off the camera truck. We see man number 2 saying some very racist things while claiming he is not a bigot. Those two things don't seem to jive with each other. Next, we see a Fernandez Brothers Cineservice van crashed into a tree. A man who witnessed the wreck says the people in the wreck looked like they had never driven anything before. They also hit the tree doing 80 miles per hour and then walked away from the crash. Interesting. In case anyone isn't aware, the implication here is that the undead have stolen the Cineservice van and drove it into a tree because they're from the 1800s and they don't know how to drive.
I wish we could have seen, like, that as a like a spin-off issue or something, like a special of, like, undead road trip or something like that.
Yeah, that would have actually been kind of cool. And then in the next two panels, we see someone from behind trying to get a job as a ticket salesperson at a movie theater. The guy doing the hiring says a lot of people can't handle the job due to having to sit in a tiny box all day. The man seeking the job assures the hiring man that small boxes are not a problem for him, thus circling back around to the dead man at the beginning of the story who couldn't rest in his coffin. The movie theater seems to have a lot of movie posters up related to the undead. I'm sure that's just a coincidence. So here's some interesting information I found out about the movie posters. Africa Blood and Guts, aka Africa Edito, by Italian director Giulietto Giaquetti, was among the earliest documentary exploitation films depicting real scenes of human and animal mutilation. Along with similar films such as Mondo Cane, it appealed to a morbid curiosity. Twitch of the Undead Nerve, aka Boy of Blood, 1971, written and directed by Mario Bava, is a gruesome slasher film. For some more on Bava, you can read Tim Lucas's book Mario Bava, All the Colors of the Dark, which artist Stephen Bissette praises on his blog. Some other posters we see: Night of the Living Dead and its sequels are classic horror movies by George Romero about corpses coming to life, not to be confused with Orgy of the Dead, screenplay by Ed Wood, 1965. Orgy of the Living Dead was actually a slogan to promote 3 Italian films that were shown together: Curse of the Living Dead, aka Kill Baby Kill, 1966 by Bava; Fangs of the Living Dead, aka Malinka the Vampire, 1968, and Revenge of the Living Dead, aka Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, aka Zreeks, in 1972. They are not a part of the Romero series, but are just a few dozen films to capitalize on the Living Dead title. On the next page, we see the man getting settled inside to the box to sell the tickets. The manager of the theater says he likes the man's attitude and work ethic and feels like that he could use 10 of this guy. And the guy in the booth says that won't be a problem. He can arrange 10 more people just like him. As the manager leaves the theater, we see Alice's dad tending the ticket booth.
I love this ending. This was probably one of my favorite endings for a Swamp Thing book, and it actually made me like, I want to see more of Alice's dad. Like, I think it'd just be a fun. I think it'd be a fun little comic. Like nothing, no big super battles, nothing like that. Just everyday life of a zombie trying to live in the modern times. How would that work?
Here's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that at some point, Scott Snyder, when he was writing Swamp Thing, that he picked up on this thread and gives us an issue about Alice's dad. You know, when he was doing Swamp Thing in the New 52 era, which was what, the mid 2010s?
I think
Maybe.
so. Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope he does an issue, and I have no idea if this exists or not, but I hope he does an issue about Alice's dad. Or somebody does. Somebody picks it up at some point in the future.
I would love if no one does it, and it's like, man, get me in there. I will write that issue because I just like there's a lot that could be fun with that.
You heard it here, DC Comics. Hire this guy. Man, that was such an action-packed issue. As I was reading this, I had to remind myself to slow down and make notes on what I was reading because we have to do a show on it. I just couldn't wait to see what happened next. The action in this issue was great, and I thought the issue was paced really, really well. The art in the issue wasn't the best, but we've seen worse, too. Despite its heavy subject matter, the issue does seem like it was a little lighter in tone than the previous issue. And the ending really tickled me as well. I think Alice's dad is going to be legitimately happy dispensing tickets for a movie theater for the rest of his undead life. So overall, I'm going to give this issue a 4.2 out of 5 burning plantation houses. The only reason I'm even bringing it down a little is just because the art just wasn't there in a few places. If it wasn't for that, and this might have been my first 5 out of 5 issue.
I'm going 5. I'm going 5 because I enjoyed it so much. It helped me have a good day at work. Like this is one of those things where I can officially come out saying it's like, you know what, comic books improve mental health.
They do. Have you ever rated anything else a 5? I can't recall.
There's a couple I've done as 5.
Okay.
I've only done like maybe 2 or 3, I believe. I mean, like I'm sure comments will call me out on it if it's been more, but I'm going to say about 2 or 3 I've done 5. I don't just throw them out there. They've got to be really, really something with me, and this was one of those really, really somethings.
Very good. I do want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. We are really glad that you were here with us. We do this for the love of the comics medium, and I hope you can really see how much we both really enjoyed this issue. It was just this issue was top notch. One of the best Swamp Things I think I've read.
Yeah, and on top of that, I think like hopefully people kind of pick up on the fact that the way we talk about comics, that they pick up on the love that we have for comics.
Absolutely.
And you can pick up on that love too if you join us on Patreon, where we have the post-crisis chat book club for all of our members. We'll let our Patreons get some of their says on the book. You got like something you want to comment on it, just do that, and then we'll when we record, we'll read those. Also, you know what? If you want to check out more of us, check Blue Sky. There's a link in the description down below. You can find us on the old Blue Sky up there.
Yeah, and you know what? If you have thoughts on this issue, leave us a comment down below. We would love to hear what you have to say, and one of us at least will get back to you when you do comment. Also, don't forget to check that description below for links to our Amazon affiliate page. You can pick up that absolute Swamp Thing book that I've been talking about that I wish would get here to me. I ordered it on Black Friday at Thanksgiving, and as of today, it is we're done with the first week of January, and I still don't have it. Amazon gets you books much more quickly than other online retailers. Anyway, if you click the Amazon affiliate link to make the purchase, a little bit of your purchase comes back to the channel, and it doesn't cost you anything extra.
If you could like and give this channel a subscribe and comment on this video as soon as you see it, that kind of stuff does help the channel grow. And eventually one of these days, I'm gonna come up with an actual contest for whoever comments first. We will do something. I will get him to do something.
And lastly, I want to give a big shout out to our editor, Nacho King. We could not do this without you, buddy. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And I know I stole Cookie's line by saying that, but I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you and all the work you put into this. Thank you so much. In closing, I just want to say I would love to see more plantation houses burned down. That's going to be our sign-off phrase for the week.
I'm okay with that. I was gonna say like I want to go watch a movie now with Alice's dad, but yeah, we can go with that one.
Thanks everybody for joining us.